Hello, and welcome to episode 66 of Prose. This week, get confused as a man ruins his chance at stardom. Weigh universal good and evil in a Chinese restaurant. And reinvent the horror of a Kafkaesque transition after a night out. By way of our usual updates, I'm still continuing my struggle in learning new equipment and new programs. But we will all be the better for it sooner than later. Even so, it is slow going, as you have obviously realized by now. Additionally, as we march ever toward fall, my day job is actually in full swing. So you are hearing this weeks and weeks after I actually recorded the episode. My sincere apologies if I don't address something from interactions online in now, because I am now in the past, you're in my future. You get the point. All that being said, please don't hesitate to reach out, which brings me to my last point. I would love for listeners to come and join in on Prose's social media presence via all platforms under the name @ProsePodcast. The best way to really help the show, as is true for all podcasts, is by leaving a rating or review at Apple Podcasts, or on any podcast service, really. Ratings and reviews are what help others find the podcast and help keep me going. Plus, it kind of makes me smile. For easiest access to the show, subscribe using iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, or whatever podcast catcher floats your boat. Thanks so much for listening. Let's get to the tales, shall we? This week, we have Your Stories, Yin and or Yang, and a Halloween-induced replaying of Sushi Night. Enjoy. Your Stories, an original short story by Jared I. McGee. Robbie was so excited to be meeting with Katherine Heinemann, the editor of his university's literary magazines. After 2 years of languishing toward an MFA, Robbie had finally scored a meeting that might change the way the university, its professors, and the world at large viewed his works. As soon as they sat down in the on-campus Starbucks, Robbie started right in. All right, Miss Heinemann, here we go. I have brought you 2 story premises that, I think you're going to be pleased this afternoon. I think you're going to like this indeed. So strap in. So here we go. In the first story.
Go to the strip club, maybe you are stripper. They don't work in money though, do they? Hershey's Kisses. Little old man takes a liking to her. You? Her. He gets more and more drunk and starts just really giving lots of kisses to that person. At some point, the dream shifts and the girl at giving the guy narrator a lap dance, they end up really kind of liking each other. He spends all his Hershey's Kisses on her. They try to get one last lap dancing. At the end, turns out that the bar is closed for that. Now they have to go back to the girl back room things. Instead, the boy lets the girl use the time just to take a break, lean against him while both are facing the stage and watching the house band at the end of the night. The rain outside it becomes audible, and then they were curious about whether or not you should go ahead and go. The boy and girl end up at the girl's apartment. Her slower brother is playing in Mario game and repeatedly failing. They talk about grasshoppers. Grasshoppers is the thing that the girl's niece goes to every day. The boy starts to find out more and more about the humanity of this stripper. They start to snuggle and watch the other guy play Mario Kart. They start to hold hands. They start to really care about one another. There is lots of love, but through them.
As he went to continue, Robbie realized that Heinemann wasn't listening to him as intently as she had been when they were starting. Moreover, he realized that his own explanation had turned into a semi-rant that was bordering on incoherent. What was going on with him? He couldn't understand it. these were his best ideas. These were the ideas that were going to change his life. Was something just not translating to Heinemann? But wait, they hadn't sounded sound to him either. He quickly realized that he was just staring at the editor with his mouth agape, not saying a word. He tried to recover. Miss Heinemann, I truly apologize. I have no idea what that was. It was, to be honest, one of my great ideas that would no doubt produce a wondrous piece for your publication, but I seem to be having some trouble voicing those thoughts on this fine mid-morning, quickly turning afternoon. He was losing her again. Her eyes were glazing over. She looked at her watch, looked back up. Without further ado, Miss Heinemann, here is your next masterpiece for your masterpiece.
The other story was the one where a guy brings a girl over. The girl is much younger but legal. They had a weird relationship earlier, maybe, but they are togetherish now, and I'm not sure what predicated this togetherness. However, a guy shows up as they begin to slowly try to get intimate with each other. The guy is supposedly the man's father's new boyfriend, and this freaks them out, and they all call the cops, and craziness ensues. I think that the girl and the guy must have been babysitting the house, and so the guy showing up in the same thing as the game and showing up in its situational irony, and...
Robbie stopped. He felt like he could not breathe. Miss Heinemann thanked him for his time. She got up with a screech of her cheap metal stool. He watched her head out into the sunny day. He had failed. Again, he had come with his best ideas, and somehow he had botched them. They had become some strange morass in his mind. Were these even the ideas he thought of in the first place? Was he this bad of a writer? No. He was not. He had been told his entire life how great he was. He was destined to be one of the best, and he would not start to doubt it now because of one off day with one off woman at some nothing of a university on some worthless afternoon. Robbie took out a couple napkins from the napkin holder on the table. Robbie took out his favorite black-inked pen. He would begin his revisions and continue his steady march to the inevitable stardom that awaited him somewhere down the line.
Go to the strip club, maybe you are stripper. They don't work in money though, do they? Hershey's Kisses. Little old man takes a liking to her. You? Her. He gets more and more drunk and starts just really giving lots of kisses to that person. At some point, the dream shifts and the girl at giving the guy narrator a lap dance, they end up really kind of liking each other. He spends all his Hershey's kisses on her. They try to get one last lap dance.
Thank you for listening to Your Stories, an original short story by me, Jared I. McGee. All musical tracks and sounds that back this story come from freesound.org. All these sounds are being used under CC 01.0 Universal Public Domain Dedication licenses. Please stick around for our next story and even more fun here on Prose. Yin and or Yang, an original short story by Jared I. McGee. A bearded man jauntily enters in, walking with the verve of Kramer, strutting to an audience lapping up his antics. He is superbly happy and beaming with true joy about something as simple as getting dinner out with his aunt and having a drink after a hard day. His positivity is palpable. His shining exuberance is in direct contrast to the most noticeable other denizens of Chow's Chow on a Friday night in Minor, Colorado. A group of 5 young men loudly proclaiming themselves bros are drinking heavily, allowing their revelry along with their volume to spike, never quite ebbing for much of anything, somehow maintaining their raucous behavior through constant drinking. They smile, but they don't seem to have that smile reach their eyes or their hands or their shoulders like the bearded man does, as he waits for what one can only assume is a takeout order, his aunt having walked out the door to go see what she can find in the little strip mall. The men are all of an age, both the solitary man and the pack, most likely between 28 and 35, but they all carry themselves so differently. The bros, rather than oozing sunshine and amiability, seem to have nothing more beyond their raucous exterior. Smoking, loud, hollow laughing, a constant grasping at a generic form of masculinity they learned from one too many action flicks and heaps too many cop shows. They are not fully aware of what they are or what they aren't, but they do have the aura of men unsatisfied. Of men that might not be able to verbalize how and why they are failing at life, but that know they are, indeed, going down a well-worn path that leads to nothing. That nothingness is doused out with some loud football. Is it the Patriots versus the Panthers tonight? And a lot of booming braggadocio. Encomium after encomium about the genius and talents of Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, Jeff down in shipping. The encomia are quickly replaced by some well-placed taunting about wives, girlfriends, would-be conquests there in the restaurant. Sometimes, all three attributed to the very same bro. The nameless bearded man, the non-bro, stands near the bar area waiting for his ordered food to be brought out of the kitchen, deftly bagged up in the coarse brown paper bags and given to him, the jovial guy having already paid for his food upon first entering. That's just how he seems to go through life, thinking of others and their convenience first, ensuring that he makes his interactions with those around him as painless and overtly pleasant as possible. His propinquity to the bro group ends with simple physical proximity. To an outside observer, this bearded man has nothing in common with these others. He seems a different species altogether, devoid of all the gesticulating, posturing, loud vocalizations that remind an astute observer of nothing less than a gang of gorillas, puffing up and challenging one another for mates or territory or food or just because, or, well, it's an Animal Planet scene come to life at any rate. Chimps or gorillas, that's what they resemble. The bearded man must have ordered a great deal of food, or possibly one of the more fryer-heavy dishes because he's standing waiting for a very long time. After a time, the hooting and hollering of the bros decreases marginally, and they begin to turn their attention to this man standing so calmly and quietly watching the football game. They snicker and harshly whisper about him, the rasping speech the same harsh din that all drunks think passes as clandestine chatter. The rest of us in Chow's Chow could hear the vaguely disparaging remarks about his dress, his beard, his very being, but the bearded man only snickers a little and goes back to watching the game and, occasionally having a bit of amiable side conversation with the hostess, waiters, and waitresses as they pass by. The bros quickly tire of trying to bait him, realizing after a few short moments that the bearded man was not the type of low-hanging fruit they were used to. They would have no arguments tonight. They would go an evening without any sort of physical row tonight. The wait for his bags of food finally draws to an end. That wait had been quite long for takeout. It has been 30 minutes, if it has been one, and the bearded man clearly called ahead for the order. Yet, he smiles and thanks them profusely, tossing a $5 bill into the tip jar, a tip well beyond his means if his current state of dress correlate with his economic standings. He begins whistling and breezes out of the glass doors of the establishment, holding the doors open for an older couple coming in even in spite of his armful, and generally leaving all those around him with lighter spirits and simple smiles on their faces as he heads into the night to find his aunt. This contrasting set of personalities in Chow's Chow on a Friday night in Minor, Colorado shakes my table mates and me. We cannot help but wonder if both types of being need exist in this reality of ours. Must there really be a yang to this kind soul's yin? Must there be balance? And if so, must that balance really be so lopsided? 5 devoid of humanity to 1 so very full of it. We sip our Mai Tais, eat our faux sushi, and continue on with our Friday evening out, troubled by our ponderings but still grinning from that brief bit of basking in the shiny soul of that nameless bearded man. Thank you for listening to Yin and or Yang, an original short story by me, Jared I. McGee. All the sounds and musical tracks that you hear in the background come from freesound.org, and they are being used under CC 01.0 Universal Public Domain Dedication licenses. Now, though we normally have been going with the 2-story format for the better part of a year, because it is October, and that means it is the time of Halloween, I want to go back and revisit some older stories for those that maybe are just joining pros. So, to get us in the Halloween mood and gearing up toward horror and all things scary or off-putting, the final story this week is a story from many, many episodes ago. I hope you do still enjoy it. Let's revisit Sushi Night. Sushi Night, an original short story by Jared I. McGee. I am a sucker for sushi. I am not, however, skilled in Japanese, so I end up calling all the various dishes by my own cutesy names that I come up with or by the animal that I'm mawing over and ingesting. I'm telling you, I love it all. Octopus? Yup. Sea urchin? Sure thing. That super expensive blowfish that's supposedly so dangerous to consume if it's not cut properly? Yes, indeed. I've had that particular bugger 4 times, much to the woe and chagrin of my wallet. The point is, I do love sushi. Now, what this means is that when I was out for my bi-monthly dinner date with my mother and sister to Sutkina, our favorite sushi joint in Rothville, Tennessee, I didn't think twice about diving into a tray of the rawest, most delicious sushi I could get my hands on. Damn it if it was not the freshest fish you could get your hands on in a landlocked state that was far from a gourmand's paradise. And damn it if I did not think twice when, as I leapt into the rolls and sashimi, I got a little squirt or two from the juicier than normal catch from the chef's morning trawl. Where did he get this stuff anyway? Anyway, this was not something new, of course. Hence my lack of reaction. I have a tendency to eat too fast, no matter what I'm grubbing down on. I think that habit comes from many, many years of intense training a la the Tennessee public school system. 25 minutes for lunch, not counting walking to and from the cafeteria, any necessary locker visits, and the line in the cafeteria itself. Yeah, that'll get you eating fast. That is, if you want to actually get anything down your throat and in your belly. For this fat kid turned quasi-athlete, that wasn't a question. So by God, I got pretty damn good at chowing down an army's worth of food in a very short time. So yeah, this is why I slop and slosh all over the place, even when I'm eating some moderately priced, but aimed at Tennessee's version of high-end, sushi. Fish juice right in my eye. I absent-mindedly wiped it away with the back of my right hand, took a sip of my too sweet tea, and kept on wolfing. My mom made some joke about me winking at the waitress. That was, maybe 15 minutes later. I gave her a sarcastic, "Ha ha, Mom, nice one," and moved toward finishing off what little was still available for eating. In total, we were only sitting down for roughly 45 minutes, and I am not the only fast eater in my family, and Sutkina is fast-paced with their service. I'm thinking the chef's business model revolves around volume, but that's a digression. We all jostled over who would get the check, even though we know that Mom will always win. I mean, she always wins. We grew up dirt poor, but now we have a tiny bit more money than we once had, and she likes to ensure that she uses that lower middle class wealth, spoiling her kids. The compromise comes when I am allowed to pay for our post-dinner Starbucks, and my sister is allowed to pay for our post-dinner gelato. The former is a necessity for me, the unabashed caffeine addict, and the latter is a necessity for my sister, the unabashed ice cream addict, though she scolds me to never call gelato ice cream. "That's low class. It's different, Jeb," she always says. From beginning to end, from the time we left our house until after we got home still nursing our coffees and gelato, we were gone from the house maybe 2 hours. From Sutkina to our house, it was shorter still, 85 minutes. Therefore, by the time I was washing my hands after having relieved myself from way too much culinary indulgence, my eye had been stewing in fish juice for just under 2 hours, give or take a minute or 20. As I washed my hands, scrubbing away with my mother's warm brown vanilla foaming hand soap that plays Amazing Grace when you push down to get the foam, I whistled along with the tune and looked up into my own eyes, and shit. My right eye was bright red. No, that's not right. The white of my eye was the color of blood, a deep, dark crimson in the middle, giving way to an incarnadine outer rim. My pupil was hazy, with a film over it. My unusually gold-brown eye with flecks of hazel was... well, it was black. But a part of me knew that that black was the deepest of blood reds. The lid was covered in blisters right down to the tear duct. It looked like I had put on some bumpy pink eyeshadow above my right eye. The cheek below the eye was puffy and swollen. I tried to squeeze out a giggle. I kinda looked like I'd been punched in the eye, or at least that's what the people on TV looked like when they got punched in the eye. No matter. As an adjunct professor, I don't have any health care. I don't have any good health care, that is. So the next morning, I headed over to the urgent care place down by our local CVS. Over the course of an hour, I checked in, filled out forms, got weighed, and shit am I ever overweight.
I thought I knew how much, but jeez. Got checked out by a nurse practitioner and was diagnosed with conjunctivitis. Ah yes, the dreaded pink eye. I zipped next door to the pharmacy and picked up my antibiotic gel that I was to put on and in my eye for the next 2 weeks. No contacts for me. I got to go full nerd with no respite for at least 14 days. That's cool. As my hair has thinned, glasses have come to look good on me for the simple fact that they take attention away from my wispy mane. In 15 minutes after getting my miracle gel, I was back in my apartment poking the aluminum tip of that medicine into the bottom portion of my eyelid, filling it with the medicine, creating a pocket as the instructions told me to. I also Q-tipped a healthy dose on the pustules on my eyelid. Fuck! This thing hurt. By sheer happenstance, all of this mess fell in the middle of my March break from my gig. Well, I guess I should be more hip and call it spring break, but the howling winds and driving sleet outside just didn't make it feel quite right to do so. The reason this matters is because it allowed me to sleep in such a way as would normally be impossible during any other time in my usual year. Believe it or not, this allowance translated into me sleeping for 16 straight hours uninterrupted. Yep, that's right. No sleeping pills, no melatonin, nothing. My body was telling me to sit down and chill out, and it took this opportunity to get the message across and get itself some much-needed respite from my usual never-say-stop lifestyle. I woke up after my long coma and stumbled to take a piss. Piss I did, and, again, as I washed my hands, I looked up into my eyes. Well, my eye. My left eye was still its usual color, size, presentation, you name it. My right eye, however, well, it was something else altogether. Everything but the pupil was dark crimson, almost to the point of being black, but there was also a strange iridescent blue sheen to it. The pupil, though, was the deepest, darkest void of black I had ever seen. In a human, anyway. The eye staring back at me would be more well-suited for an arachnid or a fish, or an insect or a cephalopod. Being the good millennial I am, I raced over to my computer and pulled up Google, tossing in cephalopod eye as my search. Being the good science fiction fan I am, my mind was coming up with innumerable possible means of my eye becoming something else. I forewent the reading of any articles or wiki pages on the creatures of the deep and went straight to the Images tab. There, I saw small square after small square of eyes so eerily similar to my own, a wave of nausea hit me, doubling me over. I just barely scooted over to my small trash can by my desk before I retched up what little I had in my stomach from the night before. In that little black wire basket, atop a Twinkie wrapper and some crumpled up attempts at poetry, I saw a swirl of browns, a little rice, and some bits of flesh from last night's dinner. My brain began to make connections only a person who indulges their imaginative fancies could possibly ever make. Werewolf. Werebear. Werepig. Werefish? Weresquid? Too much D&D in my youth. Too many sword and sorcery novels. Some bad fish from Sutkina. There was no way this was happening. I fumbled back into the bathroom and lathered on more antibiotic gel than was necessary. That'd fix it. It had to. I wandered into my hall and opened my stand-alone medicine cabinet, took out my thermometer and checked my temp. No fever. I'd hoped that my odd thoughts and funky feeling could be attributed to a spike in my temperature, but damn, nothing. Just this little bit of effort had absolutely zapped me. I snagged a big glass of water, taking it straight from the sink instead of my Brita in my fridge, and headed back to bed. If I weren't out of it and zonked, my thoughts would have swirled and screamed and kept me awake. Despite my concern for my morphing eye, sleep took me quickly. So quickly that I couldn't even continue reading up on conjunctivitis on WebMD on the little tablet I'd brought along for some before-sleep reading. No dreams. Void. I woke in sweat and with an extreme pain in my mouth. On my mouth? I groggily reached for my water, spilling it all over the floor. Shit. I hastily disembarked from my bed and hopped over to my dirty clothes hamper, picking up a musty hoodie from a recent jog to do the job of soaking up the water from the floor. Yeah, it's the amazing life of a bachelor. My vision cleared a bit once I got my glasses on, and I headed to the bathroom. I walked into the dark room and took a deep breath. Turning the overhead light scared me a bit. The last time I saw my eye, it was terrifying, jarring. One more sucking in of air, steeling myself, screwing my courage to the sticking place, and click. The squid eye was still there, looking back at me with that unwavering, inhuman stare. It seemed to be moving around on its own. I felt my stomach threaten to rebel again. Then my jaw dropped. My lips had taken on a deeper red hue than normal, but that ruddiness was orange-tinged. They were almost scaly and were damn near hard as rocks. I ran my tongue over them. The tips in the middle were a bit pointy, almost sharp. As I drew my tongue back in, it slid across my teeth, which seemed to be loose, or looser than they should be. What the hell was happening? Was this some kind of epic universal joke on me? Was this some Kafkaesque black comedy, too played out to be any good? Yet again, after only the briefest of stints out of bed, I felt exhausted. I followed my steps from my last trip out of the bedroom, getting my water, going back to my room. Sleep didn't take me as quickly this time. My mind wandered. It wandered more toward Lovecraft than to Kafka. This whole thing seemed like a supernatural horror thriller. I went to bark a laugh at my thought, and it came out as a choked gurgle with a squeak or a squawk on the back end. The foreign noises crawling out of my maw are the last thing I heard as sleep pulled me down away from consciousness. Dreams of water, of endless blackness and never-ending surges, waxing, waning, pulling, tugging, of brief slivers of silver shooting by. A phone ringing woke me. Phone seemed like an odd concept. I reached over to my bedside table to answer. My hands didn't work like they should. My eyes didn't work like they should. My thoughts became more and more fuzzy. The last thing that did not seem alien to me was the glimpse of my vibrating screen and Mom scrawled across it in a background picture. It held an image of my mother and me at Branson Landing in Missouri, right by a big carved statue of a bear, shaped from an old oak. We had our arms wrapped around one another. That was one amazing vacation. My vision glossed back over into something that didn't seem right to my brain. I suddenly had a pang of fear, not because of this unknown something that was happening to me, but because I realized that I might not see my mom again. If I were still capable of love or desire or anything, I would have burned with it, screamed, filtered through it. Instead, all of my thoughts were null, as sleep threatened to take me under yet again. Whatever this was, divine justice, bad luck, bad science fiction come to life. Whatever it was, it had me. I shed what I thought might have been a tear as I closed my eyes, wishing for sushi night with Mom and Sis, and gave in to this unholy slumber. Thank you for listening to Sushi Night, or Sutkina. All 3 of the backing tracks for this story were taken from the Free Music Archive, and all 3 are by Blue Dot Sessions, from their album Algae Fields. They are, in order of appearance, Algae Trio, Algae Tinder, Collecting Samples, and Aram. They are being used under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial 4.0 International licenses.
That'll do it this week for Prose. Thank you for enduring that old audio. Clearly you can see we've upgraded some things since we last heard Sushi Night. I hope you'll join me again in 2 weeks' time for yet another episode of Prose. As always, please do love those around you, tell them that you do, and embrace this life as it is stranger than fiction.